in what's being seen by many as an increasingly assertive partnership. Chinese troops will travel to Russia to take part in joint military exercises. The drills will be led by the host and also include India, Belarus, Mongolia, Tajikistan and other countries. Moscow announced plans to hold the week-long Vostok exercises from August the 30th. It comes as Russia wages its costly war in Ukraine. China's defense ministry said its participation in the exercises was part of an ongoing bilateral annual cooperation agreement with Russia. But under Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, Beijing and Moscow have grown increasingly close. Last year, the two countries held joint military exercises in north-central China involving more than 10,000 troops. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Arise correspondent Laurie Laird to look at these developments in more detail. Good to see you, Laurie. So China saying it's sending troops to Russia to take part in joint military drills. What do you make of that? Is it a sign of strengthening bilateral relations between the two countries?
Well, I think bilateral relations between these two countries have been very strong, particularly after Vladimir Putin went to the opening of the Olympics in Beijing, and the two men, affirmed their intention to cooperate very, very closely. So it's not surprising to me that China will be participating. I think what interests me is the breadth of countries that are taking part in these exercises, including, crucially, Charles, India. India, hasn't officially chosen sides in the Ukrainian war, but India has made it very, very clear that it is reliant on Russia for military hardware and is sticking by Russia for that reason. Now, earlier, years and years ago, we'll say decades ago, the relationship between China and Russia was also dependent on military technology, military transfers from Russia to China. China has managed to develop its own military machinery, but it is still sticking to Russia at the moment. But this is a bit of a PR exercise for Russia. Russia is saying, look, we're doing these annual drills, and look how many countries are coming along with us.
And we see this growing proximity, Laurie, and this growing relationship, as you mentioned, between the two countries. I mean, is the balance tilting more heavily towards China or Russia?
Certainly, China has very much the upper hand in this relationship, and China is very much helping to finance the war effort by buying Russian energy, Russian crude oil. Russian crude oil is going all over the world, but China is buying a lot of it, and in fact, at cut rate prices. So that's helping China, also helping to get revenues into Russia. So the two have a very close economic partnership, and that is exactly the way China likes to do business. China is looking at mercantilistic relationships, and so as long as it can work with Russia in a way that benefits it monetarily, it will continue to do so. But I think crucially here, Charles, is that we're not seeing any evidence yet, or at least the spooks, the spies are not seeing any evidence that China is doing anything active to try and help Russia to evade sanctions, where we're getting all sorts of indications, suggestions that perhaps Turkey may be involved in something along those lines. We're not seeing that from China. So it's a sign that China is happy to get cut price oil from Russia, happy to put a happy face, a positive spin on their relationship. But it also shows us that China does not want to completely remove itself from the global economic system.
But you are, of course, an expert on economic matters, Laurie. I mean, if the sanctions hit Russia harder, and we start to see a Russian economy that is more dependent on China, could that ultimately become an uncomfortable position for Russia, especially if it is increasingly seen as the junior partner in that relationship?
Well, I think the only body that doesn't realize that Russia is the junior partner in its relationship with China is Russia. But you were bringing up a very, very good point, and that's secondary sanctions. And the most natural way for the West to widen sanctions, I mean, they're sort of running out of bilateral sanctions or sanctions on Russia only. The way to widen things further would be what's called secondary sanctions, and that would be to penalize anyone doing business with Russia. Now, the West doesn't want to do that right now because, remember, the West is still reliant on Russian oil. And even if some of that Russian oil is going to China at cut rates, that increases the amount of supply in the system and keeps prices down. But I think China is very much aware that secondary sanctions could be something that come down the road. And everything that China is doing right now, it seems like it is wary of secondary sanctions and would not wish to bring that on itself. China is too open an economy, too reliant on trade to risk secondary sanctions and all the opprobrium that would bring.
Laurie, for the moment, thank you very much indeed.